What's up, brothers and sisters? Your brother G World 7_D. I'm gonna do a quick video, and I used this book before. Queen Khalifa and the island of California. She ruled in paradise into the great flood of the early 1800s. Now I'm just use this book because I want to show you something or discuss something real quick and show you how our ancestors were in tune with the world, the globe. Okay. This part right here. American pyramids, the fire within. There are more than 1,000 pyramids in Central America alone. There are 300 pyramids in China and over 200 pyramids in the Sudan. The world-famous pyramids located in Egypt total around 120 pyramids. It's actually probably more than that, buried deep under the sand probably. According to Wikipedia, there are 118 pyramids. There are 18 famous Mayan archaeological sites in the Yucatan, and each of them has pyramids in numbers of 3 to 20. It means that the average number of pyramids of the Yucatan is 230 to 250. To know exactly the total number of the pyramids of all Mexico is unknown today, even with advanced typographical equipment of today. Maybe they don't want us to know how many. Mayan pyramids soaring above the surrounding jungle, such as 65 meters high Temple 4 at Tikal, are amongst the most famous images from ancient Americas. Pyramids were built not as tombs to their kings, but as spiritual ascension chambers. Legend has it that Napoleon Bonaparte spent a night in the king's chambers of the Great Giza Pyramid in Egypt. When he emerged from the room the next morning, his facial expression was changed, traumatized and ghostly, so the story goes. Upon seeing his altered image, an assistant asked if he had seen something terrifying inside, but Napoleon refused to give any related comment and stressed that it should not be mentioned again. Years later, when Napoleon was on his deathbed, a close friend asked him about the experience he had when he was inside the king's chamber. Napoleon was about to say it, but changed his mind at the last minute. He shook his head and said, "No, it doesn't help. You will never believe me. The ancient ones built the pyramids in alignment with the luminaries, now called plane T's, above. The reason was to harness the knowledge and power of heavens. They would spend 3 days inside the chambers and were said to gain total self, big S consciousness. The knowledge gained was no doubt profound and is a big reason we see such incredible buildings and structures that even today, with our modern engineers, computers, and supposed advanced technology, have no clue how they did it. After ascension, the masters had harnessed mind over matter and could literally sing into creation whatever they wish. This is how tons of stones would move hundreds of miles, and precise sacred geometry was used in design and build out. Pyramids were also periodically enlarged so that the interiors were excavated. Sometimes reveal a series of complete but diminishing pyramids, often still with the original color stucco decoration. In addition, individual shrines could be amalgamated into a single giant complex over time as Mayan rulers attempted to impress their subjects and leave a lasting mark of their reign. A good example of this development can be seen at the North Acropolis of Tikal. Let me stop right there. I'm going to use this book again, dealing with the following article with Grand Canyon. But I mentioned before how you have pyramids globally, how there's some similarities and there's some differences in how those pyramids are built. A lot of them are like aligned with each other around the globe and from various continents. They sort of like aligned with each other because a lot of stuff is being aligned with the stars. And so our ancestors knew how to chart and measure the movement of the stars in the sky, the celestial, or the so-called celestial gods, or the celestial images. They knew that. They were in tune with nature because it was clear skies back then at the time. You didn't have all the smog like we have today with factories and all that stuff, cars running around, polluting the air with the exhaust engines blowing out a lot of smog out of exhaust engines. You didn't have that. So they was able to get a clear understanding and viewing. They was able to chart the skies, look at the Like I said, chart the sky. They had ancient observatories. I mentioned that in my other videos. But you see how these pyramidal structures were built globally. They weren't just in one location. They weren't just in so-called modern-day Egypt or in so-called Nubia. They were globally. You had in China. You had here in Americas. So you had pyramidal structures globally. Brothers and sisters need to understand this, man. And I emphasize, with my videos, I try to emphasize, I want us to think critically and understand that so-called black people building all over the world, there had to be some kind of one world connection of Negroes building. I said before that the original so-called Mongoloid people that came into Americas were so-called black themselves. I emphasize this. You can look at images of certain Asians. You can see the blue-black Asian who has those so-called features and woolly hair. And I'm emphasizing this because there's this push by some of these Negroes who don't believe that black folks weren't here, so-called black folks weren't here in Americas before Columbus. That is asinine. That is stupid. That is ignorant. And anyone who's telling you that, man, they are very misinformed, uneducated, and extremely ignorant. I mentioned the ancient ones in this article. How they built those structures over out on the West Coast. How when you look at the Mali over in Africa, these structures parallel that of what the ancient ones built here in Americas. And then also you look at over in Asia. It was like a one world global, either not necessarily just say civilization, but a passing of knowledge, of spreading of knowledge. Alright, so we have to understand that black people travel globally. So most so-called black Americans did not come on a slave ship. They are descendant of mostly the southeastern black Aboriginal Indians that were already here. After all my years of research, I come to that total conclusion. Because they could not, most of them did not come on those damn slave ships. Yet if you come over with slave ships, and I said this in other videos over and over again, but they were absorbed by the Aboriginal black population that was already here, and then you have a large number of black Aboriginal Europeans that came over here. Now, not every single black person here have, quote, black European in them. There's some who just straight Aboriginal Indian, but a large number of people here are a mixture of Aboriginal black Indian and Aboriginal black European. So it's a little bit of both. And then there's also, you have some black, maybe some have made some black Asian mixed in them, or so-called Mongoloid black Asian. But there's the black population here are varied. It's not one type. It's not, the physical features is not one. And our people always range in a different skin tone. We always had the rainbow and skin complexion. We didn't need white folks for that. I'm emphasize this because this needs to be known, because many of our people continue to regurgitate these lies that they're being learned from by their